You're listening to the Visionary Lifestyle Podcast, the show that's dedicated to raising consciousness and empowering you to activate your highest potential. I'm your host, Magda Freedom Rod. Our guest today is Laura Plumb. Laura is a leading educator on the power of the Vedic sciences to promote sacred health and sumptuous living. Formerly the general manager of the Discovery Channel Europe, Laura is now the founder and director of VedaWise, offering clinical services in natural medicine for whole person wellness and trainings in the Vedic sciences. She offers classes and consultations and serves as a contributing Ayurvedic educator at the UCSD Center for Integrative Medicine. Working for years in the fields of health and human potential, Laura is a Vedic Healer, Ayurvedic Practitioner, yoga teacher, food writer, and co-founder of the Deep Yoga School of Healing Arts. She has studied the world over with some of the greatest luminaries of our time, practicing and sharing what she has learned from ancient proven wisdom for modern dynamic times. Laura's blog, food-alovestory.com, is an inspirational resource for Ayurvedic recipes and wise living. Her popular whole food plant-based seasonal cleanses are powerful, effective, and deliciously nourishing. Her articles on health and wellness have been published in Huffington Post, Ayurveda Next Door, Spirituality and Health, and the Times of India, among other national and international media. Laura and I connected instantly when we met at the International Yoga Festival in Rishikesh. I interviewed her in a garden at the Parmarth Niketan Ashram during the festival. She's a super graceful woman and yogini. I so deeply enjoyed my time with her. We're super aligned in our approach to food and yoga, and she has loads of wisdom to share. Now, guys, I apologize for the sound buzz in this episode. My microphone was on the fritz, and there are a couple very brief moments of buzzing, so please stick with us through this because the value of this episode is deep. Laura dropped some serious wisdom, and I know you'll gain so much from it. Make sure to check out the show notes for links to her work. Enjoy. Laura Plumb, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with me. We are here in yet another garden in the Parmarth Niketan Ashram at the International Yoga Festival. And it's evening time now, post-dinner, and it's a little more quiet around here than I've heard it in the month that I've been here. Mm-hmm. It's nice and peaceful here.
So lovely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I see you as a kindred spirit. Mm-hmm. We are very much, moving in the same spaces, teaching yoga and teaching people about food with a deep interest in Ayurveda. Mm-hmm. So it's really lovely to connect with you. We're also California girls. Absolutely. In India together.
Children the same age.
Children the same age.
Right.
I mean, it just goes on and on, right? Yeah. Long lost soul sisters. Yes. So really lovely to connect with you here. I've come to 2 of your classes here at the festival. As soon as I saw you in the program, I immediately was drawn to your energy and read your bio and was like, wow, I need to meet her. And then when I saw the titles of your classes on the schedule, I was like, whoa, this is fantastic. I'm so intrigued by what you're doing, and to some degree it feels like a reflection because we're really on the same wavelength with a lot of things. The class that I went to, I think it was yesterday morning, was the Yoga of Love. Yoga of Love. Right. This is right up my alley. Right. And today it was Darkness to Light. Mm-hmm. And both of these concepts resonate really deeply with me, and I deeply enjoyed the classes, and I love how much you teach through the teaching. I mean, you're leading through the asana, but you have so much to share in between, the poses and during the poses. And it was really powerful, especially that first class, because I was one of the last people in the room, and the room was full. Yeah. And I tried to take the corner spot, and you invited me right up into the front, right in front of you, so we were face to face, like literally within like maybe 2 feet of each other for most of the class. Yeah. That was really special too. And I love your teaching style. You're so warm. Thank you. You're so down to earth, and I'm deeply enjoying it. What drew you to yoga? When did your path to yoga start?
It's a good question, and you spend time sometimes reflecting, how did I get here? And the more I think about it, the more I realize it goes back further than... so it depends what the question is. So if the question is, when did I start doing asana, that was when I was about 30, so that's about 24 years ago, a little bit longer. But I actually, as a young girl, I grew up near Lake Michigan, very close to the lake, and I used to just go to the beach all the time. And we had this long pier at the beach, and I would just wander right on out to the very end of it. Winter, summer, spring, autumn. And I would just go sit there. And I don't know why I did that, but I would just sit and stare at the lake. And Lake Michigan's big enough that if you look at the horizon, you're just seeing water. So I really started just sitting in contemplation from about the age of 14 and became vegetarian when I was 16 and started reading about Buddha at 16, 17. But it's not like it was any concerted sort of an idea that, okay, I'm going to become a yogi. I just was drawn to these things. I'd hear about this and I'd want to go explore it. But more than anything, I think I just really loved nature and always felt nature as my mother. And so whether it was the water, the lake, or just being in a garden like we are now, I just always, lying down in the grass looking up at the stars, I just always really, really appreciated not just the quietude of that, but the sense of belonging, the sense of belonging to the world that I got from that. So that's, to me, where my yoga started, because I think that's what yoga is. But I didn't start doing yoga asana and yoga, the pranayama, and sort of 8 limbs of yoga until a little bit later. I was about 28, 29, 30. So.
I'm glad you mentioned the 8 limbs of yoga. Can you go into that a little bit? I really want to help people learn more about this. And in my introductory episode for the podcast, I just touched on it and I said, I'm not going to go too deep into it because I want to have other people that I'm interviewing share some of this wisdom. And also, we don't have to go super deep. It's only an hour podcast. I know there's a lot of information in there. Right. Also, in your teaching today about the Gunas, I think... we can maybe give some abbreviated, just introductory information to people about these, because I think, again, your teaching style is so easily received, at least by me, and I hope by others listening to this show as well. I'd love for you to share a bit about that.
Yeah. Well, starting with the 8 limbs, so yoga is a very, very ancient tradition. But there was a man who lived along the Silk Road in Afghanistan, what's now Afghanistan, and his name is Patanjali, and he is said to have codified yoga. There's an idea that travelers along the Silk Road asked, what is this yoga thing? And it is so many things. It's singing and dancing, right? It's lighting a fire and offering rice to the fire. It's bowing to statues. But it's also physical practices that we know as asana, pranayama, breathing practice, etc. So he is said to have codified, meaning he took this huge scope and he put it into 4 chapters and to various sutras, and he wrote what's called now the Yoga Sutras. And in the first chapter he talks about really the promise of yoga, what yoga can do for you. And in the second chapter he offers a path. In the third chapter he offers, again, the siddhis and what can happen to you, psychic powers that can develop as you do a practice. And in the 4th chapter he talks about really yoga ultimately is about freedom. So even as you develop these powers, don't stop there, move towards moksha or freedom, kaivalya. But in that chapter where he gives you a path, he gives you these 8 limbs. And so limbs just, sound more like a tree, right? So really, it could be that you're going to this limb today and that limb tomorrow, depending on your evolution and where you are. The limbs, people think of them as this sort of linear progress, and they are very much so, but they're still limbs. And so we're still, today we may be deeply immersed in one of the limbs, and tomorrow we have to go back to the original limbs. But he does start with the yamas and the niyamas. And the idea is that people once upon a time weren't really supposed to start asana, which is the postures of yoga, or pranayama, until they had really firmly established themselves in right living.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 5 yamas that talk about how to be in right relationship with the world, and then there's 5 niyamas that talk about how to be in right relationship with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea then is that once you're in right relationship, then you can start to build your powers.
Mm-hmm.
But if you start building your powers before, then you're just going to feed your ego. And in feeding your ego, you may really be feeding some really negative habits and negative patterns. And a lot of those negative habits and patterns might be in your subconscious mind. And that's more what we talked about today. But basically you've got yamas and niyamas.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got asana, pranayama, pratyahara, which is withdrawal of the senses, dharana, which is concentration, dhyana, which is meditation, and then samadhi, which is divine bliss, union with one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the 8 limbs. That's as you asked for.
Right. The nutshell
very
version.
Much.
Right.
Very
People
much,
study
there's
these
so
things
much
for a
to
lifetime.
it, right? Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's good to give people just that little nugget of foundational understanding. And then the Gunas. I was really loving your teaching on the Gunas in the class that we did today, which again was from darkness to light. And you opened with this mantra, which has been my mantra here this week. There are many mantras, right?
Yeah.
But this one keeps coming to me. Actually, it's been here for the whole month, and I actually was not familiar with this one before I came to India.
Oh.
And the teacher who teaches the morning class here at the ashram sings it every morning. She opens the class with it. And I was so resonated with the vibration of it. I think maybe after the 3rd day I went up to her and I said, "What is this mantra?" And she told me the name, and I went and I Googled it, and she said what you said in the class, the translation. And I was like, this is one I need to know. And I still haven't fully learned it.
Yeah.
But I was so called to, resonating with the vibration of it, as I said, and it just keeps coming up. And like when I came and I sat down in your class today, and you're like, "Oh, we're going to start with this," and then Anandra also was on that, got the memo, and I was like, and I got the memo because I showed up too, and we're all like on that vibration. And then even just now, as I was waiting for you. They were singing it in the kirtan here, and I was just like,
wow.
it just,
That's
and in 2 of the other classes I was in today, like, and I've never heard it before, and it's just, clearly this is my mantra for this trip, it's beautiful. Can you tell us about this mantra?
So this
it's
mantra,
a simple one.
Om Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityormam Mritam Gamaya Om 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 Om. It's one of the very oldest. It's a Vedic mantra, and it's one of the very oldest of all mantras. It's a perfect mantra. It's a beautiful mantra because it's not praying to anything. Not that that's okay too, but it's just an available mantra. It's available to all. And it's only this. Take me from asat, from non-truth to truth. Or take me from illusion to truth. Take me from darkness to light. Take me from, mortality, or an idea, the illusion that I am this body and that I will die one day, to immortality. And it's just a beautiful way to start your practice. Just let this practice help me move from darkness to light.
Right. It's short and sweet.
Yeah.
It's so powerful
right.
and to the point, and it's so simple. I think I'm very committed to learning it, and I've been singing lines of it, but I haven't gotten the whole thing yet, and that's part of the practice, right? Is studying it and learning it and practicing it, and I've heard some really beautiful versions of it just over these last days, and I will try to find one to share in the show notes. Maybe you have a favorite version of it.
David Premal does a really beautiful version.
Okay.
David Premal does a great version. Okay. And the one that you're talking about is probably Mataji. Mataji might have a recording of it too.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't her class. It was another couple classes. maybe she has one
She
that
might,
I could use
yeah,
a recording.
yeah,
Okay, yes.
right.
Mataji is the main teacher here at the ashram. She does the teacher training. She trained the teacher Indu that I also interviewed for the podcast, who teaches the daily classes here, and apparently they do the teacher trainings here at the ashram. And yes, she has this angelic singing voice, right?
Yeah.
That'd be great if we could find a version from her to put into the show.
Yeah.
I will ask her about that. Great. Right, so the class started with that, and what a beautiful intention. And this was another thought that I just wanted to say out loud on the show, is that I so deeply appreciate the intention that you bring to your teaching. It's, there's a lot of thought, obviously a lot of planning that goes into it, and you're not just showing up and teaching this physical practice. You're teaching the 8 limbs, throughout your practice, and the love and intention is just so palpable, and I just really appreciate that. So the gunas you talked about today, can you share with the listeners about that, please?
So gunas is just a word that means the energies of nature. And I love that in the Spanish language you find that word guna, nirguna, meaning nothing. So guna is like the thing. And things in nature have expressions. Everything in nature is either rajasic, sattvic, or tamasic. And so starting with sattvic, the word sattva means clarity, light, balance, peace, harmony. And it's really what we're all seeking through a yoga practice. It's really what we're seeking through Ayurveda more specifically, is to come back into balance. Because any living being, any living system in harmony, in balance, in equilibrium, naturally can heal itself. So you have spontaneous healing once you have equilibrium. Rajas is anything in nature that's growing. So in the spring things are growing. The plants are growing. The fruit trees are growing. Food is growing. And if you think about food, you think about, maybe a peach. If you pluck it too early, it hasn't fully ripened, right? And things when they're growing, they're really growing quickly and they're growing in lots of directions. That's rajas. Sattva is when that that peach is perfectly ripe. And it's sweet and it's juicy, right? And it's just perfect.
Yeah.
And even tasting it, if you're really paying attention, you're tasting Satchidananda, you're tasting bliss. But if you don't eat it, it's going to rot and decay and decompose. And none of these things, there's no value judgment around which one is better, because even decomposing things become the earth again, become the soil, and give rise to new peaches and nectarines and strawberries and all kinds of delicious fruits. So it's just that in yoga we're seeking to move from tamas, which is darkness, through rajas, which is activity, to sattva, which is balance. And when we think of the states of mind, human beings, we're always cycling through all these things. Tamas in a human being could be laziness or stagnation, ignorance or just lack of knowing who we are. It can be greed, it can be just anything that makes us stuck or attached. Rajas can make us stressed because we're going. We're seeking accomplishment. We're trying to get the next thing. We're constantly seeking. And that seeking all the time can cause us to force outcomes, and that can cause us to be very stressed out and even frustrated and sometimes angry. So in order to break up the stagnation and the darkness and the heaviness of tamas, we need action. Right? We need to get up off the couch and go for a run. Right? Well, but then if we're just running all the time, what are we running towards? So we need to then get to a place where we then sit, and we sit quietly, and we just let everything settle, and we pay attention to our breath, or the quietude, or a mantra, and that's sattva. So the yoga practice is really moving us from tamas by using rajas, but then once we've got the rajas, just enough, we don't want too much, just enough rajas, then we get to a sattvic state. Then it's up to the individual. When the individual is ready, it's from sattva that transcendence occurs. But transcendence doesn't come out of tamas, and it doesn't come out of rajas. The other interesting thing about tamas and rajas is that, again, that's not really a linear progression. Tamas, because it's dark, it hides. And because it hides, it can create compulsive behaviors, rajasic behaviors. A lot of times you'll see people who are very busy in the world, very, very active, but their state of mind is tamasic. They're greedy, they're selfish. But that greed and selfishness, which is tamasic, is causing them to be busy all the time because they're out there trying to make money and grab. So they kind of go hand in hand. And again, the idea of yoga is to bust it up and get free of it, to get to that place of balance. Ayurveda is the same. Ayurveda is seeking to get us to balance, whereas Ayurveda is only getting to sattva. Yoga is seeking the transcendence that comes from the sattvic state, arises up out of it.
Okay. Yeah, great
Because the
insights.
transcendence is then to move beyond nature itself, right? Whereas Ayurveda is working with nature, yoga is then helping us go beyond the natural, go beyond the world of the body that will one day
be free of anyway.
Yeah, become soil as well, just like anything.
Right. It's part of that cycle. Yeah, and so Ayurveda, how long have you been interested in Ayurveda and studying it? And you teach cooking, Ayurvedic cooking, right? And what is the name of your website? It's so fantastic.
Food.
Tell us.
alovestory.com. It's food-alovestory.com.
Food-alovestory.com. And when you told me that, I was like, yeah, when are we doing this interview? Because we need to talk.
There's so many things.
Yeah, because I don't know how much I shared with you. I don't remember how much I shared with you about what I'm doing with conscious eating. It's as an expression of love, self-love, animal love, and planet love. So when I hear you talk about food as a love story, I'm like, yeah, let's hash it out here.
More love.
Yes, more love and food, yay, and yoga, just all of it. So what is, tell us more.
Well, much like you it sounds, because I teach yoga and I've been practicing Ayurveda now for about a decade, it just is so obvious that, food comes from Mother Earth, and Mother is love. Our Mother Divine that we speak of in the yoga practice is an archetype and an energy of love. And it's as if the principle of love comes alive through the earth, comes and refreshes us and nourishes us through the water element. We have our Mother Earth, we have our Mother Waters. We don't have any life without water. We know that through the Ayurveda understanding of the 5 elements of space, air, fire, water, earth. What is the water principle really at all? It relates to Ojas. It relates to that which holds us and contains us and nourishes us. And that's Mother. So I named the blog food-alovestory.com because a lot of people think, oh, you must love food. And sure, I love food, but it wasn't that. It's that food loves us. Food loves you. And hopefully we can cultivate a loving relationship with food, because we know that a lot of people have really stulted, relationships with food. It's almost like we aren't allowing the love to come to us, whether it's because we choose food that isn't really food. Like, I really wish we had a name for food that comes from a laboratory. To separate, right? Right, to call it something so that we can distinguish between what is food, which comes from the earth, versus what is something that comes from a factory that really is nothing.
We need to create a word. I mean, frankenfood is a start.
Frankenfood,
It's like GMOs or frankenfood, but maybe we can create a new word.
Yeah.
We can create a hashtag in this day and age. That's
we
what
should.
you do.
We should. I just feel like if people understood that food is not just something you buy at a grocery store, right? It started from a seed, add some water to a rich soil, add some love. I mean, what is it to till the soil and to plant a seed and to water it and to put it under the sun and let it grow? But it's an act of love in many ways to tend to that and to watch this grow. Just like you watch a child grow, you can't help but love it. You watch your plants grow. Anybody who has their own farm in their backyard or front yard or their own food garden, you just really feel that love. I compost, and every time I go to take the waste out to my compost thing, I call it feeding my worms.
Right.
You come to love your worms, right? And so it's the same thing. These farmers must, I hope, love their food. So everything is planted in love, grown in love. The earth loves the seed, holds it, nurtures until it's ready to sprout. And then it rises up. Where does it go? It goes straight up to the sky towards the sun. that's an act of love. Gosh, the plants, the way they turn towards the sun, following it as it goes from morning to night. And then beautiful people who we couldn't live without come and pick our food. And that's just such a labor.
Labor of love.
Of love.
Yeah.
And then it comes to you, and then somebody hopefully is holding it in their hands and smelling it and looking at it and listening to the music of the seeds as they shake, or the vegetable as you chop it, and then you pop it in the pan and pop, 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 and and all that wonderful music. And you know, even in India, whenever I take cooking classes, they teach you so much, and the complexity of an Indian dish is extraordinary. And at the end of it all, these chefs, without fail, have always said this. Finally, what makes the dish good, what makes it taste delicious, is the love that's in your hands as you prepare the meal.
Yeah, well, you think about it, right? Because you've got the heart center, and then you can just intentionally, when I teach cooking, and you know, that's what I do, I say, you know, go into the heart center and send it down your arms and through your hands into the food, because it's straight from the heart. I mean, there's a direct, physical connection there, right? It's so energetic. It's just the energy is just flowing right from your heart down, you know, through your hands into the food. So
it's absolutely straight from your heart. And when we practice yoga, we really feel that our hands, our arms are an expression of the heart.
Right.
But it's straight from the heart too, in that the food is straight from the heart of a mother.
Yeah. And I love
So
that you talk about
that.
the worms, and it's funny. Just recently, I think maybe even just now in India, this you know, when I bless my food before I eat, I always you know, internally say this blessing, and I bless the sun and the rain and the seed and the farmer and the soil. And lately, the earthworms have popped into my mind. I'm visioning the earthworms when I'm blessing my food, and I'm like, thank you to the worms, you know. And you know, the farmer who picked it, and the person who drove it to wherever it was received, and the person who prepared it, and you know, the doctor who told me which food was better for me to eat, you know, than the other, and like just putting all those layers of appreciation into it, and blessing it before we eat it.
Yes, yeah.
It's powerful, and it just it raises the vibration of the food, right?
Yeah, but so beautiful to be able to love the worms, because that's what makes the soil rich.
Right, exactly.
And a rich soil makes a tasty
and
apple.
And nutritious. Not only tasty, but more densely nutritious.
But that's what we love about Ayurveda, right? It teaches us that the better the taste, the more nutritious it is.
Right, right. So Ayurveda, so I'm curious what a cooking class looks like from you. Like, where do you teach it, and is it like, are they online videos, or are they in-person classes, or? Well,
I do a lot of things, but I started, so what happened is the whole blog, all the cooking started because I was teaching yoga teacher training. I've been a vegetarian, as I said, since I'm 16, and way back then, I'm from Chicago. I mean, I'm from the meat packing capital of the world, and it was weird to stop eating meat. You know, people around me just didn't understand it. So I had to figure that out on my own, and figure it out. I did. You know, that it's really actually pretty easy, I think. But you have to make sure that you're not just eating. A lot of people say this. You have to make sure you're not just eating pasta and pizza and
you can't be a
brownies
carbitarian.
And cupcakes, right? Yeah,
carbitarian's not going to work.
We're really talking more about whole food, plant-based, which is, I think, in all cases, a better way to put it. But so doing the teacher training then, decades later, people in the class were asking, I don't know what to eat. Some of them were new to these ideas of ahimsa, which is the first of the yamas.
Right, I really wanted to go into this. I'm glad you mentioned it. Okay, go on.
Right? So, and a lot of them, I mean, some of the people in our teacher training, 50, 60 years old, they've been married to somebody for 30, 40 years. The person they're married to loves their meat, potatoes and veg. And honestly, they just didn't know how to begin. So I started with cooking class, and that's where the blog then came out of that. But it was just to invite them over and say, here's how you make ghee, and here's how you make khichdi, and here's how you can make a raita, or here's how you can make some ferments, and here's some steamed vegetables, and just to sag, just showing them how to make some of the just very basic Ayurvedic meals. So that's for the most part. Then I started doing seasonal cooking classes. So what you would eat in the summer, what you would eat, and I was at first just trying to teach seasonal eating to people, not necessarily doshic based, because I thought that might confuse people. Because again, it's hard. Sometimes it's confusing to figure out what your dosha actually is.
Right.
But if we ate seasonally, that would be a really good start for all of us, right? And then we can adjust slightly to our dosha. So in the summer we were playing around with more raw foods. In the winter everything was cooked. In the spring it had some more spice. And in the autumn it was very vata balancing, so it was richer and heavier and yummier and lots of cinnamon and things.
Right, and you're developing recipes as well, right?
Yeah.
Looking at your website, you've got beautiful photos, and it looks like you're coming up with some really extraordinarily delicious recipes.
Cooking, for me, in many ways, is a meditation.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And sometimes it's just something I have to do. Especially if it's been, if I've been away teaching for a while, or it's a kind of nesting, it's a kind of way of coming home to myself and my heart, and my mama, my mother who brought us this food, and because I know I'll probably write about it, there's that aspect of it's also a sharing, it's a gift, it's a creating and cooking for others, even if I'm only cooking for myself.
You're developing something that you
that will
realize
go
you can share.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So going back to ahimsa a bit, ahimsa and food, the course that I created has a foundational principle of ahimsa. That's the self-love, animal love, planet love, non-violence, non-harm as much as possible. How does ahimsa relate to food for you?
Well, let's just start with the very personal, and I think the most practical, and the greatest reason for anybody to do it, which is food can harm you. So don't harm yourself with food that's going to harm you. Food that harms people may, come in different ways, or it may harm you in different ways. But there are a lot of foods that very immediately give you a stomach ache, or eventually over time will give you acid reflux. And by that I mean, maybe 10 years of eating this food before you get it, but then once you eat it, you get something right away. You get that instant response. So there's the instant response you get where there's a food that you're eating that's just you're not digesting. And so it's giving you a headache, or it's giving you gas, or it's giving you cramps. But then there's food that takes a lot longer to catch up, and ultimately isn't great for the body. This has become more and more controversial now, but I believe the studies that very, very, very vast, extraordinary studies that show that red meat, for instance, feeds cancer cells. So if you're eating red meat, we all have cancer cells in our body. It's not just to say you need a doctor to say you've got cancer. We all have cancer cells in the body. So are you going to feed those cancer cells? Or are you going to try to eat foods that diminish that and fight that off? So first and foremost, think about, do you want to nourish your body, or do you want to harm your body? Because you are a living ecosystem. And this beautiful saying, my favorite saying from all the Upanishads, yata pinde tata brahmande, that is the pinde is the Brahman, the creator. So in the smallest is the greatest, right? In the one is the all. In every individual is the universal. In the personal is the cosmic. In every cell is life, all life, right? So we are all a mapping of the cosmos. We are all a blueprint, right? We are all, a biosphere that is the replica of the great cosmic biosphere. So if you take care of yourself, you're taking care of the all. So use yourself as your activism, you could say. Use yourself as an experiment. But if you're going to experiment, be sure to be a doctor, a scientist, so you're really taking good notes. And learn about what foods truly nourish you. Keep a journal. Notice your energy after you eat. Notice if you have a headache. Notice your joints. Notice your skin. Notice it for 3 days. I'll always say to people after I do a cleanse, because I also do seasonal cleanses now, and I've been doing those for years. And after a cleanse, after we have no meat, no wheat, no dairy, no alcohol, try to reduce caffeine or eliminate it, and of course no sugar. And joy of joys, it's all very delicious foods. Nobody has to starve. It's rich and delicious, but it's whole food, plant-based.
Not a
it heals
deprivation
you.
diet.
Right?
It's
Yes.
a delicious diet.
delicious.
Right? That's the cool thing about Ayurveda too.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very, very healing. And at the end of a week, people not only feel great, but they often don't want to go back to their old bad habits. But I will say to them, if you feel you need to you want to bring back wheat, or whatever it is, or 2 or 3 of these things, try them one at a time and give 3 to 5 days in between. Because it can take 3 to 5 days for the symptoms to show up. So if you do have a gluten intolerance, it might show up 3 days later.
Mm-hmm.
I had a client who did a seasonal cleanse with me once, and 3 days after she finished the cleanse, she had a friend over, and so she made her some chai, and she used milk. She boiled the milk, and she broke out the next day and had acne all over her face. And she hadn't had that in a long time. And in that moment, she realized she has a lactose intolerance that she had no clue about before.
And that was just a 3-day cleanse?
It was a 7-day cleanse.
Oh, so she took it out of her system for 7 days, and then she had it. And then
Really, she had it
this
10 days,
reaction.
because it was 3 days after the cleanse was over.
Uh-huh.
So it was 10 days without any dairy, and then she had that reaction immediately.
Well, let's talk about dairy a little bit, and a question that I love asking conscious community yogi people about going to through the lens of ahimsa, right? Because the dairy industry in the West is fraught with suffering, right? And if we're practicing ahimsa, the first limb, right? There's so much consumption of dairy, and where do you stand on it?
I stand where you I think you're going. I think in every choice we make and every action we take, I think we have to consider. Yeah, so we haven't even gone there. So first, I was saying ahimsa is how do you treat yourself, right? Treat yourself with kindness and feed yourself nourishing foods and pay attention to what really nourishes you. But I also want to say there's a subtle aspect to food. So the food, we know, the gross aspect of food feeds our body, the gross part of ourselves. But the subtle aspect of food should nourish our subtle body, which is our mental and emotional nature. And so if the food you're eating has a subtle aspect, if the subtle aspect of your food has experienced suffering, then you're putting suffering into your subtle body. So if you're eating something that in its last moment was screaming or frightened, it's captured in the food. And I think about like a juicy steak has all that blood. I mean, blood is the life force, right? The blood is and blood is the composition of every animal's blood, every human's blood, is determined by the brain. So if the brain is, if there's fear going out from the brain, then fear is in the blood. And so that juicy steak, oh, God, you're eating fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. So that's one thing. The next thing, part of ahimsa, is then consider where your food's coming from. Mm-hmm. Is it coming from a place where, it's everything. Are the farmers being treated well? Are the farmers being paid well? Are the farmers being respected? Because if they're being respected, then they're going to put more respect into the food and how they're growing it and how they're picking it. Is the land being respected? Is the land being treated well? Are they, turning over the soil? Are they leaving it to go fallow now and then? Are they putting in pesticides, or is it organically raised? How is the land being treated? Here in India, where we are in Rishikesh, people talk about the rights of the earth. They talk about rights of water. If anything that is alive is a living entity, it should have rights. It has rights to its own life. And the earth has rights to be alive, and it has rights to live its ways, its intelligent ways. And water has rights to live its intelligent ways. And if we don't work with that intelligence, then we're denying the intelligence of our food, and then our food doesn't have the intelligence to support our own inner intelligence, which is why so many people are getting sick. It starts with the land. So obviously, and then if you're going to talk about animals and dairy, it's all there. A lot of people are vegetarian and not vegan in the yoga community. Ayurveda, of course, includes dairy, includes a lot of ghee. the doctors and teachers that I've had in the Ayurvedic world have always said it goes back to the fact that people used to have a cow in their backyard.
Right.
The cow was part of the family. The milk was taken after the child of the cow, after baby had been after the calf had been fed, and then turned into ghee so that it would last throughout the year, so that you weren't also trying to keep a cow milking all year long. It was only milking in the spring when it had its calf. So that's where you got yogurts and you got ghee and things that would last throughout the year. But that isn't the case anymore, except in certain places.
It's not the case that they have a cow in the backyard?
No, in America, for the most part, we don't have a cow in our backyard.
Yeah, but it's certainly not.
Who's part of the family?
Certainly not, but not so much even in India. Well, I guess most of India is still villages, right? So it is common here, but I was surprised to get a chai guy in the alley here gets his milk from Delhi. I'm like, how are you doing that for him? There's cows everywhere. And he said there's not enough supply here, and it just makes me wonder how much of the dairy being produced in India is industrially produced, where the cows are not treated well. You know?
So this I can't say because I've done all the research myself. So this is a story that I heard, but I've heard it a couple of times. Apparently in the 40s, there was a man who might have been a businessman, and he was a very wealthy man, and he decided to do something for the rural farmers. And he created a collective of dairy farmers. And it was a way actually for them to stay at the level they were at, not have to grow and industrialize. And he put together a way of getting the milk from these small rural farms to the cities. And that collective is now the collective for all of India. That's what I understand. So that the milk in India, for the most part, comes from these small farms. Organic, rural, traditional farms. That's what I understand. I can't,
Yeah, this is an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, I would love to find out more about that.
Yeah, keep asking these questions, yeah. And I struggle with it, with Ayurveda, because I'm, coming from the West and just seeing the dairy industry there, it's just wrought with suffering, right? So I advocate for, no dairy, and then I come to India and, I'm so into Ayurveda, and it's like milk and just so much ghee. So much ghee, and ghee is, as medicine, right, for thousands and thousands of years, so that I feel like there's got to be something to it. But again, I guess it comes back to what is the source, right, and where does that come from? And from what I understand, most of the medicinal ghee that they're using here comes from Kerala, in the small farms in the south. And, the cows are treated with love. And I spoke to the Ayurvedic doctor here about it. Off record, I didn't get a chance to ask him about it when I interviewed him, but he told me off record that it's about the prana, right? Which is going back to the source, right? Is it a happy cow that's in the backyard eating grass, or is it a cow that's hooked up to a machine in a factory?
Absolutely.
And so the health benefits,
That's why I started by saying, how healthy is it for you? How are you practicing ahimsa with what you eat? Just on a practical level, is it good for you? Because not only is the cow suffering, and you and I might have a compassion for that cow, but even for people who don't have that a mind, that's what we're talking about, tamas, rajas, sattva. Even if somebody's not as sattvic in their awareness, it's not good for you to be eating foods that come from that, because it doesn't have the prana, it doesn't have the intelligence. Right? It's not going to nourish you properly. So don't do it.
Yeah.
Source.
don't do it.
Yeah, source well. Sourcing is so key right now. And like you say, it's challenging. It's challenging for a lot of people to really find the right sources. We're more and more awake to it, I think, in the States, certainly where we live in California. But there's also more and more tricks, and more ploys, and more that feels hidden that you suddenly find out about. Still, with Ayurveda, I think coconut is a great alternative. Coconut milk, coconut water, coconut oil. It's a great alternative to the dairy.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's so many great alternatives, healthy alternatives, but the thing that can't seem to be replaced is ghee, right? And then then there's this whole craze about grass-fed butter now, right? Like in the West, and paleo and everything is like everything's all about grass-fed butter. And that's the one thing that in Ayurveda that I'm struggling with is the ghee, because I just did 3 weeks of panchakarma here, and I've been vegan, although I don't use that word so much. I don't like to put myself in the vegan box, but I've been vegan for about 9 years. And I come here for 3 weeks of panchakarma, and they want to put ghee into every orifice of my body, for 21 straight days, and I'm here trying to, heal a medical condition, and I'm entrusting my care to 5,000-year-old medicine, so I say, okay, to practice ahimsa for myself, I will try it, and I've tried it, and I'm finding some great healing, but I wonder about the epigenetics of it, because in my mind I'm feeling like, did the cow suffer? This ghee that I'm taking for myself, did the cow suffer? And so I just wonder if it's going to have the proper healing effect that it is purported to, because I'm doubting it and questioning it just because I know so much about the dairy industry and the horrors of it. So it's a conflict.
Well, I mean, all I can feel is bless you for your compassion. For such a beautiful big heart. I spent 2 months last autumn in Tamil Nadu and Kerala, and where I was staying at the Ayurvedic place there, which is called Vedigram. They have their own cows. They have all the milk that they use in whatever ways they use it, and then the ghee comes from their cows. And so I got to see how those cows are really well taken care of, and the cows get chanted to and
wow, that's
sung
sweet.
to, and it's a beautiful rhythm. It's a beautiful life, I think, for those cows. And again, I can't say that's true everywhere because I haven't seen everywhere, but I have seen that. What I'm sad to hear is that here in Rishikesh, which is really the home of Ayurveda. Ayurveda originally comes from Rishikesh.
Not Kerala.
They call Kerala the home. I asked that. I said, why is Kerala considered the home? Ayurveda as the science comes from Rishikesh, but Kerala is considered the home because Kerala is such a fertile land with the lush jungle there. So absolutely every herb, every fruit, everything from the Ayurvedic pharmacy grows in Kerala. So it became the place where the kings and the royalty used to go. They'd head south for the warm, tropics and the beaches, and they would have their panchakarma and their healing time in Kerala. But I'm surprised that in Rishikesh, where you see so many cows roaming free, I'm surprised that they aren't making their own ghee here. I'm surprised. I find that sad, that there's so much transporting of food, that they've lost their connection to their roots and their ancient ways, that they aren't actually producing out of their own fertile soil their herbs and their medicines themselves.
I wonder, Vandana Shiva would be a good person to talk to about that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell us more about what you're working on. What's coming up for you?
Well, actually, I'm working on a book. I'm working on a book, and the working title is Food, a Love Story.
Oh, yay!
Right.
That's fantastic.
And the blog came from that. The idea is that in yoga, when we spend time in meditation and contemplation, we eventually come to know ourselves and to know that we are more than the body and more than the mind, more than our thoughts, more than even our breath. And what the sages, when asked, the sages would say, neti neti, I'm not this, I'm not that. But when pressed, finally they would say, well, I am Sat Chit Ananda. I am being, consciousness, and bliss. So it's just words that were used to describe the feeling. I am just being. I have no beginning and no end. I am consciousness. I am just awareness. I am perceiving. And perception has no beginning and end. And I am bliss. I feel like I'm just on the waves, of this ocean of peace and contentment. And Sat Chit Ananda project into this realm where we all exist. It projects into existence. So being, consciousness, and bliss projects into existence as life, the being piece. I am just life. I'm just alive. I feel the pulse of life. I feel my breath. I feel my aliveness. Oh, God, so beautiful to be able to just feel yourself alive, just that. And then I am light, the light of intelligence, the light of consciousness. It's by light that we're able to see, right? We're able to perceive. And I am bliss. So bliss projects as love. Life, light, and love is what we are. And life, light, and love are energies everywhere surrounding us. Life, light, and love are everywhere within us. They're absolutes and they're energies. It's like light, it's the particle and it's the wave. We are life, light, and love. We are that. And when you look at the evolution of existence, you look at how there's nothing and then there's a bang or sound or a word in the beginning, and then that moves like a wave through some outer cosmos, some space. And those waves of ultimately movement creates friction, and friction creates heat, and heat creates a fire, and suddenly a star is born. And then there is nothing but quarks and fluons until that first star, that one atomic element, which is hydrogen. And hydrogen heats up in that fire, in that star, and finally transforms into the next atomic particle. And, you get helium, you get carbon, you get oxygen, you get iron, you get all the elements of the periodic table, until finally that fire is so hot it explodes into a supernova and sends all those elements out. And that happens enough times that ultimately those elements floating out there are drawn to each other by this magnificent force of gravity that pulls things together enough, over enough length of time, to create a planet that circles around the great fire in the sky called the sun. And before you know it, it's evolved, this one planet's evolved with water and land and eventually single cell things and amoebas and finally fish, and finally something grows legs and crawls up out of the oceans and the water onto land, where trees are growing and changing the atmosphere, so finally there's oxygen. I mean, you think about the evolution, it's magnificent and extraordinary, but it all started with Sat Chit Ananda, life, light, and love. Actually, in Ayurveda, life, light, and love, or Sat Chit Ananda, project in as air, fire, water. Oh. And air, fire, water, Vayu, Agni, and Soma. Air, fire, water. Water is the element that holds things together, that binds things together. Air is electromagnetic. Fire is thermodynamics. I mean, it's all scientific. It's all there. If you look at quantum physics, if you look at astrophysics, you're just seeing Western scientists telling us the story of the Vedas. And what is the water element? It's gravity. Because gravity doesn't pull us down. Gravity pulls us towards the center. If an apple falls from the tree on the other side of the world, in China, let's say, it's not falling off the earth, it's falling up to the center of the earth.
Right.
So gravity is that which draws us one towards the other. And that's what love is. Love is what draws us one towards the other. And really, that's what food is. Food is the rising up of love. It's the principle of love that is here to make us strong, to give us delight in its tastiness, to surprise us, to inspire us, to encourage our creativity, and to draw us together to share a meal, to draw us together to remember the love. We share love over meals. We share love through our meals. So Food, a Love Story is really about the principle of food. I'm hoping that people in reading it will understand where food comes from, why it matters. I say the subtitle is, it's Food, a Love Story. What it is and why it matters.
Perfect.
What it is and why it matters, and hopefully people then will understand that if food loves you, you'll sit down to every meal to receive that love. You'll eat with more mindfulness, and you'll open your mind, your heart, the cells of your body. To what you said earlier, another thing that's very sister-like of us is that I also use that term. It's a full body yum, or a full body yes. When food is a full body yum, not just your tongue liking it, but your whole body. That's the food we should be eating.
Right. Oh, perfect.
Your body knows what it should be eating.
Yeah, that's perfect. Full body yum. We'll end
body
it there.
yum.
That's a good place to stop.
Okay, good. This has been a full body yum. Thank you so much,
Thank
Magda.
you so much for taking the time and sitting here with me in the garden in the dark after these very long, amazing days that we're having here at the festival. What's the best place for people to reach you, find out more about you and your offerings?
So you can learn more about my Ayurvedic principles on nutrition. I have over 100 recipes there, and that's food-alovestory.com. My website is lauraplumb.com, where I have free meditations. lots of videos, video interviews as well, and just lots of good juicy things to help people grow and expand and learn and remember who you are and remember the love and hold the love and be the love.
That's a lot of yum.
That's
yum. Yum to that.
Yum, 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 yum.
Yay. Thanks again.
Bless
Namaste.
you. Thank you so much. Bless you.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Conscious Eating 101 e-course. This is a 6-week online course aimed at empowering you to make food choices that are in alignment with your values. The program is based on ahimsa, also known as non-harm, and helps you make every bite that you take an expression of love, self-love, animal love, and planet love. The course offers 15 lessons and 20 nutritious and delicious recipes and is offered over 6 weeks that you can do at your own pace. It includes lessons like plant-based nutrition, protein, dairy alternatives, the story on sugar, GMOs, label reading, and many more. If you're looking to increase your health and happiness, balance your weight, reduce your footprint on the planet, and align your food choices with your values, or are interested in being part of the solution to huge world problems like climate change, rainforest destruction, and world hunger, then this is the course for you. If this speaks to you, please check out consciouseating101.com today. Thanks so much for answering the call to be here today. I'm so glad you're part of our tribe of activated rainbow warriors. If you found the show in any way empowering or inspiring, I would be so grateful if you would share the show on social media or with friends and family that you think would benefit from these conversations. And also, rate and review the show in iTunes. This is really the very best way to help support the show and help us get noticed by others who are looking for the sort of content that we're sharing. Now notice there are no outside ads playing here. That's because the show is supported by you, the listener. You can become a patron of the show with a small monthly donation by checking out the perks on our Patreon page at patreon.com/visionary lifestyle and signing up there. There's also a one-time donation button on the podcast page of the website if that suits you better. And just so you know, your donations help to cover the necessary out-of-pocket monthly expenses to produce the show and will also help us grow so we can inspire and educate even more people. And hey tribe, I'd love to hear from you. Visit me at visionary-lifestyle.com and please tell me your comments and questions. I really look forward to connecting with you. I love you. Namaste.